Hello, everyone. My name is Zach Chakan. I'm an administrator for the University of Buffalo IRB, and I will be presenting today on data security at the University of Buffalo. This presentation has been approved by the UB IRB, and this is part of the Clinical and Translational Science Institute's educational series on multiple topics, including IRB topics. The topics we will discuss today include specifically what is personally identifiable information, as well as what protected health information is. We will talk a little bit about the differences between coded, de-identified, and limited data sets. We'll look at what documents are required for certain IRB submissions that have these types of data sets, and what is the best way to protect confidentiality of individuals and keeping these data sets safe. We'll start off by defining what personally identifiable information is. An individual's medical records and other identifiable health information make up their protected health information, otherwise known as PHI for short. But protected health information is also included as part of personally identifiable information, which we can also abbreviate to PII, which includes the protected health information and other identifiable information. Personally identifiable information relates to an individual's physical health. It could be their mental health or condition, or any other information that identifies that specific individual, or it could be used to identify that person. The Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, otherwise known as HIPAA, sets the safeguards to protect the privacy of protected health information and limits the use of protected health information without an individual's authorization or consent. This slide shows the 18 HIPAA identifiers. I won't go over each of them in specific detail, but I do want to highlight a few specific cases that can cause some type of confusion or wind up being some type of debatable point in a lot of times when the IRB is reviewing research protocols. For example, zip code is considered an identifier, which you might see in number 2, as it is anything smaller than a state is considered a HIPAA identifier for address. Another one is when you think about dates specific to a person, number 3 on that list. One type of date that really gets left out a lot when completing protocols and completing data collection sheets are dates of service, such as a date of a surgery, or maybe it could be a date of death, a date of an appointment. These are all identifiable to a specific individual. Age is one that can sometimes get left out because any age over 89 is considered identifiable as well, but you are permitted to classify an age in your research data as being over 90 years old for anyone over the age of 90. Number 16, a finger or voice print, is one we wanted to highlight as well because voice recordings are often not seen as identifiable, but the IRB does view voice recordings as identifiable because they could provide the building blocks to create a voice print. A photographic image, number 17 on the list there, could also potentially be an identifier, and not just of the face, because something such as a birthmark or a tattoo can identify somebody as well. So it is important to consider if any of those HIPAA identifiers from the last slide will be collected when designing your research study. And this slide starts to talk about how personally identifiable information is handled in research data sets. There are 3 different types. There are coded data sets, de-identified data sets, and limited data sets. Here's an example of a coded data set. You'll notice on the first image on the left where identifying information is placed. You have a study ID number that serves as the study code, and identifiable information such as date of birth, zip code, and a participant's last name. On the right side image, you still have the study ID, the code number, and you have other data points listed there, but none of those are listed as identifiers. The code number links the 2 data sets together, and the data set on the right side should not have any identifiers in it most of the time whenever you are storing these types of data sets. We'll talk a little bit more about data security in an upcoming slide. This is a simple example of a de-identified data set. You did create a study ID number, which is shown in the first column on this slide, but all of the data points otherwise shown here are not considered to be personally identifiable information. In a de-identified data set, no personally identifiable information is stored or linked with the data. It's possible that no identifiable information was collected at all for the whole part of the study or obtained from some other source, or you did have a code key at some point in the study, but then it was destroyed, and what you will have for the rest of the study is only de-identified data. That happens more commonly at the end of a study, where you still might want to do data analysis, but the identifiers are no longer necessary to conduct your research study. The final data set to describe is called a limited data set, where certain types of personally identifiable information are allowed to be stored with the rest of the data. We often see limited data sets described when perhaps data is being exchanged between universities or institutions, and data is being obtained in that way and stored at the local UB site. Again, only specific types of identifiable information would be considered allowable to keep with the rest of the data. And this includes dates of service, as you see here. Date of birth in this particular example is used, but date of death or a date of service such as an admission date or a discharge date could be included in a limited data set. Sometimes location is permitted as part of a limited data set, specifically zip code in this example, or city and state could be included as well. Another example shown in this slide is if someone is over the age of 89, like I described in an earlier slide, that could be considered a personally identifiable information data point for a limited data set. When you are creating your IRB submission to put into Click, there are definitely some documents that the IRB either will request or highly recommend that you include in your submission, especially the data collection form, which we want to see for all different types of studies, no matter how you're collecting data anyway. For a coded data set, we do want to see that data collection form and the code key, and likely in two separate forms, as they should be stored separately, which I'll talk about on the next slide. And this type of study with a coded data set could include consent with HIPAA authorization as part of it, or if you are retrospectively creating data from a medical chart, the HRP 612 full HIPAA waiver is available in the Click library that you can use, and you can fill out the answers to those questions as well. For a de-identified data set, well, you will never collect any identifiable information at all. The data collection form we would still want to see, but we also like to have researchers upload a certificate of de-identification form. This is also available in the Click library. As shown here, it's the HRP 613, and it pretty much certifies that the researcher has looked at all of the 18 HIPAA identifiers that are on a different slide from a few slides ago, and you have confirmed that your data set does not include any of those identifying pieces of information. For a limited data set, we still want to see that data collection form. If you are keeping some other identifiers as part of it, we still want to see a code key in those cases as well. For example, maybe you'll still have your date of service with the rest of the data, but if you're also keeping a medical record number and their name for a certain amount of time, you should still have a code key for that information and keep that those points separate. Similar to before, if there's a consent with HIPAA authorization or a HIPAA waiver, we will want to see those documents included. Some other things to note is that the protocol, the 503 protocol in the confidentiality section should have a description of how you are protecting participants' confidentiality in these cases and how you are storing the data with specific descriptions. So it's important to include that information in your protocol. For a limited data set, if you are keeping the identifying information with the rest of the data, it's useful to provide a sentence or two of a justification to justify why that data needs to be kept with the rest of the data that you are collecting. And sort of an outside point that is only tangentially related to this, and it's not part of the IRB review process, But if you are getting data from another institution, if you're sharing data, if you are obtaining data from another institution or university, please remember to get data use agreements in place and negotiated as part of the process. A lot of times those cannot be put into place until after an IRB approval is obtained, but we just like to let researchers know about that process. In a large portion of studies, confidentiality of participants' information is the sole or most important risk to that particular study. So it's always important to keep your data sets as safe as possible and stored as safely as possible. Some IRB recommendations for data storage are to store your personally identifiable information that you collect on a separate computer or a separate locked file from the rest of the study data whenever possible, which I've referred to in a few other slides. Sometimes using a separate server for identifiers is recommended, if possible. That's not always possible in every type of research study, but if there's a separate server that you're able to use for that, it really helps to separate the identifiers from the rest of the data. If possible, you can limit the access to files containing personally identifiable information to a select few people on the research team so that not everyone has access to that information. And even when doing so, you can password protect the files or encrypt the files as well. Encrypting would mean to sort of create like a cipher or a code that needs to be put in place and without someone to have that key to get the rest of the data. Whereas if you just have a particular password to open up the data set, that's possible as well. But usually if you have password protected and encrypted files, that's one of the safest methods that can be used to protect the confidentiality of participants for your types of studies. And it is one other aspect that's come up is that REDCap at the university. If you were using REDCap, they do have a function where the data is all stored within REDCap, but they also have a spot where you can, I believe, highlight a data point as an identifier and either just have specific access to only those data points for specific individuals as well. So it's not stored separately like an Excel file or some other types of files that you may use on your computer, but REDCap does have that system built in now in certain cases. So that would be a useful thing to describe in your IRB protocol in your confidentiality section if you are using REDCap. And if you're going to be sharing your data with other institutions or other investigators at the university, if you're emailing files, it's commonplace and best practice to password protect those files as part of sending them via email. And you should really only share passwords for these files with the recipients through a separate email or other secure contact. The IRB does have a few other resources that can be used to describe some information about data security and safety. The BRB Click Library, which can be accessed by selecting the IRB tab and then choosing the Library tab, has the HRP 613 Certificate of De-Identification was mentioned previously, as well as the HIPAA waiver. And also it has a separate sort of tips from the IRB document about de-identified, coded, and limited data sets. So you can always look through that, and there's a little bit more of a detailed description on each of those sets and more tips for data security there as well. Thank you for your attention during this presentation. If you have any questions, you can always contact the UBRB helpline and Val Bailoni at 716-888-4888 or ub-irb@buffalo.edu. You can also contact me, 716-888-4874 or znchakan@buffalo.edu. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have. And also the CTSI clinical research facilitators, Marchelle Brooks and Alexis O'Brien, can be contacted as well. Thank you, and hope you have a nice day.